Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome, Mayor Shirley Washington, for another episode of the Newsroom.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
me.
for joining us
Well,
today.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. You've been in office for 6 years,
That's right.
elected in 2016, reelected in 2020. Retired school teacher and principal. And you transitioned to the political arena. How's that been?
It has not been as difficult as I thought it would be. I thought it would be totally unbearable because I would tell you, as I tell everybody, I did not choose to do this. I was chosen. And when I had that calling, I had to do it, but I didn't feel that I was that politician, that I had the political finesse to be a mayor or to hold any political position as far as that was concerned. In my education career, I felt comfortable because I knew when I was in about the 9th, 10th grade that I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. So there was no question about my career when I graduated from high school and went to college. But then, so I was prepared and I did all those things that I needed to do to prepare for that profession. But when it came down to this profession, I would have much rather to have been a council member maybe before going into the mayor's office, but it didn't happen that way.
Well, you said you were chosen for this. How did that?
I started volunteering under Mayor Hollingsworth, her term. I had retired 6 years after retirement. I went into this job. But prior to that, when you're looking forward to retirement from a career that you've been in for 38 years, you put so many things on hold, and you think about those trips that you're going to take, those to-do lists those things that you never got to on your to-do list around the house that you're going to take care of whenever you retire. Do all of that, do all the traveling, and then you get a bit bored with all of that. So I started finding something to do. I heard that there was some projects that Mayor Hollingsworth was working on, and that there were some spots that she could use some volunteers to assist. So I started volunteering. And from that, I just got a little bit involved. And at night, I would go to bed and it was like, you should run for mayor. And it just started getting worse and worse and worse until eventually I had to do something about it. So I ended up running, hoping really at the time that I would lose. I wouldn't have cared if I had lost, So if it's meant to be, I'll win. If it's not meant to be, I won't. So as it happened, I won. And as I said, if I had lost, I would have continued to support Mayor Hollingsworth because I did support her if she had won. I did support her. I voted for her. And that was a difficult task to run against her. Most difficult thing that I've actually ever done in my life,
Is it harder to corral hundreds of school children or run a city?
There are a lot of similarities. You have to always look for and think in terms of preparing for the worst, because there are things that happen sporadically in a school environment, and the same happens here in this environment. So you have to always be prepared for whatever might come your way. So I guess in that aspect, I had gotten accustomed to monitoring and adjusting in the school environment. And so it's basically the same, somewhat the same when it comes down to working in city government. A lot of monitoring and adjusting as you go.
Yeah. What are some projects that you're most involved with right now?
We have several projects, but the one that's really top of my mind at this point in time is developing the housing addition over on Ohio Street. The city purchased the southeast property. At the time we started looking at that, I thought it was going to be about 15 acres, but it turned out to be 29 acres because it's 2 parcels. And I didn't know until we got into the real estate office at the courthouse that the one of those parcels went with the school property. So it's 29 acres instead of the 14. We have applied for a Brownsfield grant to do phase 1 and phase 2 surveys. And so after that, we are hoping that we can get some more money to help with the demolition and cleanup of that property. We're negotiating to get developers who are interested to come in and develop it. So we have 3 that are interested, and we don't know exactly which one will win that, but I'd like to see us put in 100 at least affordable houses in that area to make a very nice, comfortable subdivision, much like the one down at Southern Crossing. But I want it to be a scale above, because these will be houses for home ownership, hopefully. But we are not sure just how that will turn out. It depends on the negotiations and what works best with getting the houses in. But that's one of the projects that I'd like to complete. Another project that we are working on that I'd like to complete is the Opportunity House that you're aware of, and that's in the First Ward building that we purchased a year or so ago. That's coming along pretty good. We're getting ready to put it out to bid for contractors. We pretty much have the design in place. We're also recruiting for an operator, and we've looked at Jericho Way, the folk who operate that, and a couple of other facilities that we think we're going to be in good shape when it comes down to operating and getting that up and running. But that's a project that I'd really like to see through. Another project, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Another project that I want to see through is the Pine Bluff Promise. I'd like to see us have that education opportunity for all of the kids in the Pine Bluff School District, much like the El Dorado Promise in El Dorado. Our problem has been that we didn't have a Murphy Oil or a major corporations to come in and fund it. So we've had to find some alternative way to get that done, but I think it's still a way that we can do it. The other thing that I wanted to make—
You want to explain that to listeners? What that
Well,
entails?
let's say El Dorado Promise is a promise of an education, college education, for every kid who graduates from high school. And with El Dorado is, they have a first option. They pay for the college education if the kids can't afford it, or it picks up where scholarship dollars leave off. So in some districts, or some promise programs, should I say, they have what they call first option or second option, which means the promise program picks up second. El Dorado, they pick up first. When they graduate, they automatically chip the money in for that college education. And it's working down there. But we don't have the funds from a major corporation to sustain us that way. So we're trying to find a way that we could do it. So we found that some cities, what they do is they start a savings account for every kid at kindergarten. Some states have gone back and they're doing them at birth. They meet the parents in the hospital. But we're choosing to look at doing it at kindergarten, opening a savings account, and that account will accrue interest. It's a low rate, but it's still interest. And you encourage families to make deposits into those accounts. Instead of giving them all of what they give them every birthday, give them so much to go into that promise account. Give them chores, tasks, small jobs, and that money can be deposited into the promise account. And throughout the community, we can have different incentives that the kids can compete for or work toward to put dollars into the promise account.
So that would apply to students in Pine Bluff School District and the Watson Chapel School District?
I think we should do it Watson Chapel School District, Pine Bluff School District, and even our charter schools as well. Yes, but all students in Pine Bluff. We're going to we have some partners that we're talking to who hopefully will help us with the accounts. And there are some other options out that I was doing research this past weekend. So I would like for our program to be used for not just education, but to give them that true promise. So it's realistic to say every kid will not go to college. It's unrealistic to say we have a promise fund for every kid to go to college, because that's not the way it's going to work out, ever. So we want a promising future for every child, so that money can be used for hopefully 3 things. Is what we have on our wheel table right now. And one would be education, continued education after graduation from high school, or they could use that money for job startup. If they have gone through workforce training, if they have that job that they know, or that business that they want to start, so it can be business startup. I said job startup, but business startup because I've talked to so many kids who want to go in business, and they'll come to us saying, "Can you give us a few dollars for this business startup?" So that would be the money for startup if they already have that career looming for them. Then the other would be home ownership. Let's say they have the job, they have all that they need, they don't need further education, but they need a place to live. So it could be a down payment. So with that being said, it could be the start of developing generational wealth, because they have to learn that it's important that they have that basic financial management in place. And then they buy a home, build that home, take care of that home, and realize it's a home that can be passed down through the generations.
Okay.
So building that generational wealth, if that makes sense.
We've been talking about El Dorado. I think Murphy Oil, they've moved out of there, but I think they kept that.
I've spoken to the mayor, and I've spoken to 2 or 3 other people there, and they say even though they've moved out, it's continuing.
They're continuing.
The program is continuing thus far.
So Texarkana, Eplunas had that in a story recently that you all took a field trip to Texarkana and looked around and talked to people and came back impressed with some of their initiatives. What are they doing that we're not? What are the things that they're doing that we could be doing?
Well, one of the things that I was impressed with when I went there was on the Texarkana, Arkansas side, they have some apartments, some major apartment building that's, I would say 20 feet, 50 feet at the most from the railroad track.
Yeah.
Active track. And we're talking about multiple tracks, not just one track going through there, but there are like 4 to 6 tracks right there in that area. And one of the developers who lives in the building that's closest to the tracks lives in the building. So one of the things that we keep hearing from people in our community when we talk about the downtown housing is that it's so close to the railroad tracks. Yeah. Nobody will want to live there. And I said, "Are you distracted or disturbed by the trains?" He said, "I only hear the trains when I think about it." He said, "Other than that, I don't hear the trains. They don't bother me at all." And that was impressive. And some of these apartments that he has there are Airbnbs. Wow. And they stay full. He said he has a waiting list constantly. So that was refreshing to see and to hear. They have a museum in that building that it's an art museum. And they have pieces in there that are just display pieces and pieces for sale. And they get a lot of traffic through there. And then this building has also attracted other developers to open up other apartments in that same area. So I thought that was wonderful. The other thing is they have the hotel. What's the name of it? Can't think right now.
It's a hotel like our Pines.
Much
hotel.
like our Pines. When you see the hotel, that's the first thing comes to your mind. If they can restore that hotel, we can restore the Pines. And I don't know if the Pines is in any worse condition than what it was when they started. They show pictures of what it was. And then there's another building downtown that's much like it, that's in worse shape than the Pines. It has not a single window in it, So they're doing affordable housing in this building. I think that we can restore the Pines one day with the right partnerships. And we're talking to the folk who are restoring that building down there.
Really?
I don't know why I can't think of the name of it. Don't put this in your art. Can you cut this out?
Carolyn Robinson was determined to take the Hotel Pines down, and that didn't happen. And there have been any number of efforts across the years to restore that thing. It just seems like we have been trying to get that thing put back into shape for so long.
I think if there was no hope, the Pines would not still be standing today. Right. So I don't think all hope is lost. I think there's a way, but we just got to figure it out. I think there's a way to get it done. We have to get the right partnerships there. Now they're doing affordable housing. I don't know what the mix is, but it will be affordable housing in the hotel there. Another thing that I was impressed to see was their Sanger Theater. Oh my gosh, it was beautiful.
They have a Sanger Theater too?
They have a Sanger Theater.
So there's one there and one in New Orleans?
I saw the one in New Orleans in March.
Does Mobile have one?
I think Mobile does have one. I think there are like 6
6?
There are 4 or 6 or something like that in the country,
Yeah.
but I've seen 2, the one in New Orleans and the one in Texarkana, and it is absolutely beautiful. A gentleman donated, I think it was like $1.2 million for the upgrade. I think ours might need more now because it's in a more aggressive state of deterioration, I think, than theirs ever was in.
Yeah.
But it was I just wish more people could go there and see it. And I think we need to start some big Sanger Theater fundraisers,
Yeah.
or, some projects that will support the restoration of that facility. But I do feel like eventually it can be done.
Okay. I want to talk about some other projects and initiatives, and with the backdrop being transparency. And I'll get around to that point here in a minute. But let's talk about the police chief. You went to great lengths to bring in community leaders for a nationwide search, and then that didn't work out. And then you put Lloyd Franklin as interim. You said that you would eventually reopen the search. And then without warning, you just named him as the police chief. And I'm not passing any judgment on Chief Franklin here, but was that the best move? Was that the most transparent move, considering what had gone on before that?
I think for what I saw happening in the department at that time, it was a move that I needed to make. Okay.
And let's be clear, that it is your call.
It is my call.
It is not.
And it was a move that I felt that I needed to make. So rather than hesitate on doing something that I felt was needed, I just made the decision, the executive administrative decision, to make that call. I think Lloyd Franklin has done a good job since he's been there. He's put a lot of things in place that should have been in place some time back. We had an incident that happened with structuring an auction, a car auction. And instead of those cars being prepared for auction as they should have been, they were being sold. And I think there were people in the department who knew about that. And there was no way they would not have known when the general public knew about it. So I felt at that time I needed to make a decision to bring somebody in to put some order to some things that were not in place as they should have been. And I think that has worked. So do I regret making the decision that I made? No, I do not. I feel like the candidate that we had at that time was a good candidate, but then we had a binder probably 4 or 5 inches thick of applications. And when you look through all those applicants, you didn't have people that would meet the level of experience, qualifications that I think would be necessary to facilitate a department and a city with the issues that we have. So I didn't open it up again because I knew that we would get more of the same level of applicants. And when I thought about Chief Franklin, he had an impeccable reputation with the work that he had done on the state police level. And I talked to him and asked him how he felt. I talked to some people at the state as well to see if they thought he was a person who could handle a position of this level. And they encouraged me, by saying yes, indeed. So I went for it.
Okay. Go Forward Pine Bluff. We've all heard the pros and cons of this initiative, which you support. One complaint is that Ryan Watley, CEO of Go Forward, has an inordinate amount of access to you and to setting the city's agenda. Is that an accurate assessment? And would you explain your relationship to Watley and Go Forward Pine Bluff?
We work together. So I don't agree with everything that Ryan proposes all of the time. We disagree, we compromise, we work things out. I feel like, yeah, we do communicate on a regular basis. We collaborate a lot. I'm not going to try to say we don't, because we do. I think our vision is much the same. I supported Go Forward from day one, because when I saw the editorial in the paper that they were going to form this group to propose a plan for the city, I was interested. So I went by the Mr. May's office. What was that? The
Foundation?
foundation. Went by the
Simmons
foundation.
Foundation.
Simmons Foundation office, picked up the application. I was chosen. And as I worked through that group, that planning process with them, I saw a need for a plan of this nature. We did not have a plan. At the end of the day, is it the best plan in the world? No, but is it a plan that can move our city forward if everybody gets on board and moves in the same direction with implementation of that plan? My answer is yes. And so that is the reason I have embraced it. I believe in it. I think we have to, here again, monitor and adjust. Some things that we had proposed up front, you see different things that occur as you go through the process, and you have to make adjustments as you move forward. So I believe that it has made a difference. And I think that it's made a difference that not only do we see and appreciate here in Pine Bluff, but people throughout the state and the nation can see the difference that it has made in this community.
Okay. You mentioned the Southeast Middle School, purchasing that, and thank you for, one of my questions was to flesh that out, and you did. 100 houses. That project, I'm wondering, is that something that you have described to council members, or brought in community leaders on, and that, again, this kind of goes back to the transparency part, or if I ask somebody on the city council if they are up to speed on what's going on with that property, would they know?
We tell them what's going on with that property at committee meetings. Every committee meeting, we do a report on updates of those projects. We do plan to have more public forums as we move forward. We were just trying to get an idea of how we can move forward. And we're going to have more public meetings and community meetings as to what the public would like to see as far as that is concerned. But we want an idea of what can and cannot be done before we get too deep in the weeds with it.
Okay.
That's our goal.
The same question could apply to Opportunity House. The city is committed to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this project, most of it grant money, right? Two questions here. I'm wondering what do you base your the necessity for such a shelter on? Do we have that much homelessness, and how do we know we have that? Because I don't see that. I don't see a lot of homeless people. But
some of it is going to be homeless, but it's also going to be reentry, homeless and reentry, because a lot of the people who come from prison are basically homeless if they can't find family or friends that they can live with. We do have more of a homeless problem than we actually realize. And I didn't realize we had such a homeless problem until I was campaigning the first time. And when I saw the homeless people, my headquarters was on Main Street. I tried to get there as early each day as I could. And I'm meaning 6:30 or so, I'm down on Main Street. And I saw people just coming out. Sometimes I would see 10, 15, eventually rolling out in the mornings. And I had no idea we had that many homeless people in Pine Bluff.
okay.
As I listened to homeless people in that homeless population and people in the city as a whole, we have places for females, we have a few places for families, but we don't have spaces for men. And so that was one of the reasons we put our focus on the homeless population. And most of the men, most of the people who are coming out of incarceration are men. And we hope to have job training there. We hope to have job placement, working to help them get job placement as we move forward, and to get them sustained so that they can be productive citizens in this community.
Have you included this, a similar question to the middle school property? If I ask council members about the ins and outs of Opportunity House, I mean, have you you sit down with them and go over this. This is quite a commitment from the city. Do they know what's going on?
Based on what we've told them in committees, we've invited them over to our meetings, and for whatever the reason, they don't show up.
Okay.
We've invited them multiple times, and they have not shown up. So I would say possibly we could do a better job, and maybe I should put forth more of a conscientious effort on doing that. I will say we stay very busy, very, very busy. And I'm not going to say we're too busy to inform. So as far as inviting them to meetings when we have those, yes, we invite them, and then we inform them step by step at their committee meetings and through office memos on where we are with each one of our projects. And sometimes they read those emails and sometimes they don't, because we have a device on our computer to show whether they've opened them up or not. Sometimes they're never opened. So, Byron, I'll be honest, we probably could have more face-to-face meetings, but COVID stopped some of that. We do Zoom meetings. We've been in a very precarious situation in our environment lately.
Right.
But we do our best. We don't want to fail to be transparent, but I guess it's been a bit more challenge to be as transparent as we should be in recent months.
You mentioned back to a question about the operation of Opportunity House. This is going to be geared to men, although
primarily, but we have to create spaces for women.
Create some space for women. Where does a woman go with, let's say she has 2 kids, where does a woman go? And CASA is for people who have been abused, right? So let's say she doesn't fall into that category. Where does somebody like that go if they?
Community Development has renovated. It's like a triplex. I can't think of the street off Missouri or one of those streets, for families. And it's for women with children or husband and wife with children who are homeless. And so we were thinking in terms of that shelter being a shelter that they could use. And we also have been working with the director of the Salvation Army building, asking him if he would service more families and women once we get this facility open. And he's been meeting with us, and he's on board with that plan.
And a question just about homelessness. It seems that homelessness is a lot more than someone just being financially unable to keep a roof over their head, like that they're myriad mental health problems and they have addictive behavior. Can you really turn somebody? Do you really think that this project would turn people's lives around and put them back to being productive citizens?
I'm not going to say we can turn 100% of the people that we service around, but I think we can turn enough around to make a difference. And that would be our goal. We will have the workforce training. I think that with the people who are coming from incarceration, who really need a place, a roof over their head, I think we'll make a transforming difference in their lives. I've seen what some other facilities have done. I've met with some of those facilities, and the problems that we are faced with here are very much the same as what they have in some of these other areas, and they have made that difference. And I think we definitely can transform enough lives to make a difference.
As far as running this thing, I know the person on your staff who's been pushing this the most said that they would fund it through fundraisers and grants. That's not the end game, though, right? You're wanting to turn this over to the people who run these things, and it would operate under its own
umbrella,
steam.
Yeah, it would be their responsibility primarily.
Okay.
And that's the understanding. That's our goal. We're looking for that operator.
Okay.
Now that doesn't say, if the city's coffers will be able to support they may get an annual donation from the city, much like CASA and other agencies, but it would be just a set amount that would go toward the operation, to help with the operation. Possibly. That's a possibility.
You know, we sat down with Joni Alexander, Councilmember Alexander, a few weeks ago. And I think you would consider her one of your supporters.
I do.
And she said council members, she was rather critical of your administration in this way. And she said that council members were routinely kept out of the loop of what is going on in the city government, and that as much criticism as Mayor Debbie Hollingsworth got, which she worked in her administration, that your administration is worse at being transparent than Hollingsworth's. How do you respond to that?